On the dark night of September 9th, 1980, a giant cargo ship was fighting the wild waves of the Pacific Ocean. It was even bigger than the Titanic, as tall as a 16-floor building, truly a floating steel castle. But just a few hours later, it disappeared completely. No radio signals, no floating debris, nothing at all. How could such a heavy ship, weighing millions of tons, vanish without a single trace? For the next 20 years, the authorities only said one thing: the ship sank. But when the father of one of the crew members started looking for the truth, he discovered something shocking hidden deep under the sea. That evening, the massive ship MV Derbyshire was sailing across the Pacific Ocean toward Japan. From the east, a deadly storm was moving in, Typhoon Orchid getting stronger every hour. The Derbyshire had already been sailing for 8 weeks. It had loaded 150,000 tons of iron ore from Canada, crossed the Atlantic Ocean, past the southern tip of Africa, and then moved through the Indian Ocean. Now it was near the final part of its journey. On board were 42 experienced crew members, engineers, helpers, and experts, all waiting to reach home. But fate had other plans. The ship's captain, Jeffrey Underhill, had 20 years of experience at sea. His wife had already traveled from England to Japan to meet him, but that meeting would never happen. The captain trusted the weather reports. He had faced many storms before. He believed the Derbyshire could handle this one too. There was no safe harbor nearby, so the only choice was to face the storm head-on. He slowed down the ship and slightly turned its front toward the waves. This helped ships stay stable in rough seas. He also sent an emergency message, warning about the bad weather and giving their exact location. The waves were getting higher and higher. They had grown more than 10 meters tall. Some were even as long as the ship Derbyshire itself. The Derbyshire was 1,000 feet long, even longer and wider than the Titanic. It was as tall as a 16-story building. This was not an ordinary ship. It was a state-of-the-art steel fortress built to face the world's most dangerous seas. That's why, for the captain, Typhoon Orchid seemed like a normal part of the job. But deep in the dark ocean, something was about to happen, something no one had ever imagined. That same night, 2 other big ships were also facing the typhoon. By the next morning, both of those ships had safely reached the port. But there was no sign of the MV Derbyshire. This steel fortress had suddenly disappeared without leaving a single trace. For the next 20 years, the world could not understand what really happened that night. On the evening of September 9th, 1980, MV Derbyshire sent its last radio message. After that, there was no distress call, no final message, only 6 days of complete silence. Even the ship's owners didn't report it missing right away. They thought maybe the radio connection had just failed. But as days passed, and there was still no news, people began to worry. On September 15th, an international search began. Helicopters, airplanes, and naval ships searched everywhere, but they didn't find even a single piece of debris. After 6 days, the search was called off. Authorities simply said the sea swallowed it. They gave no explanation, no investigation, and soon even the news stopped talking about it. The families of the crew kept asking for answers, but the officials told them there was nothing to investigate. The families, however, felt that something was being hidden. The MV Derbyshire was not an old ship. It had been built just 4 years earlier at Britain's Swan Hunter shipyard. It was designed to carry more than 150,000 tons of cargo, 4 times more than ships from 20 years before. It was a special type called an OBO carrier, which could carry oil one way and iron or on the way back. This saved money and made sure the ship was never empty. Compared to traditional ships, the Derbyshire could make 30% more profit. There were only 6 ships like it in the world. But at that time, British shipbuilders were struggling. Japanese and South Korean shipyards were making similar ships faster and cheaper. So Swan Hunter started cutting costs, and maybe that's where the real problem began. After the disaster, many families were heartbroken. But one man, Peter Redyard, refused to give up. He had lost his young son on the Derbyshire. He was not only a father, but also a professional ship surveyor, someone who inspected ships for a living. He started his own investigation, and soon, shocking facts began to appear. Just 18 months after the Derbyshire disappeared, another bridge-class ship called Tynebridge was caught in a storm in the North Sea. Suddenly, cracks started appearing in its steel front. The captain ordered an emergency evacuation, and the crew was rescued by air. When Peter inspected that ship, he found cracks in the same place near the front. After checking more documents, he realized that all bridge-class ships had the same problem, cracks in the same area. Those ships were secretly being called into ports for quiet repairs. He also discovered that the ships had not been built exactly as per the original design. Some parts were changed during construction to save time and money. Peter gathered all his evidence and sent it to the Department of Transportation, but they refused to act. They said, "The investigation on Derbyshire is already complete. No new inquiry needed." The authorities ignored him, but the families refused to stay quiet. In 1984, they formed the Derbyshire Family Association with one goal: to find the truth. Then in 1986, another bridge-class ship, the Kowloon Bridge, broke apart near the coast of Ireland because of cracks in its hull. This was the sixth and last ship of the bridge class, and it had never been properly repaired. This time, the British government couldn't stay silent. A new investigation was started. Experts gave their opinions, some blamed the design, others blamed the weather. But no one paid attention to Peter's evidence. The final report said there was no proof of structural failure. According to them, the Derbyshire was simply a victim of the sea. The families were devastated. They believed the Real fault was not the ocean, but the system that built and approved those ships. Still, they didn't give up. In 1994, the families joined hands with the International Transport Workers Federation and started a private investigation. They raised their own funds and planned to search for the Derbyshire, 14 years after it sank. Surprisingly, within just 23 hours, they found it, lying 4 kilometers, 2.5 miles, below the ocean surface, perfectly in one piece. It was an incredible discovery. For the next 6 years, experts studied every photo and piece of evidence from the wreck site. Finally, the truth came out. At the very front of the ship was a small storage room called the bosun's store, where ropes, chains, and tools were kept. That night, in the storm, the bosun's store door broke. It had not been built according to the original design. Water started flooding in thousands of gallons. The front of the ship became heavier and dipped deeper into the sea. Bigger waves hit harder, breaking the ventilators and letting water into the machinery room. The bow sank even more, and then a huge wave smashed the hatch cover of the first cargo hold. Water rushed in, one hold after another, until the whole ship went under. The mighty MV Derbyshire, Britain's largest vessel, disappeared into the dark Pacific Ocean. The final report showed that all bridge-class ships had similar problems: cracks near the bosun's store and weak hatch covers that didn't meet safety standards. It wasn't a single big design flaw, just many small, careless mistakes that together caused the disaster. In the 1970s, many ships sank each year, and authorities treated it like normal statistics. But the families of the Derbyshire changed everything. Because of their fight, ship designs improved, safety inspections became stricter, and international shipping rules were rewritten. They didn't just find a lost ship. They changed the entire shipping industry. Even today, the MV Derbyshire lies silently 4 kilometers below the Pacific Ocean.